With a minute of applause and a rendition of the national anthem, over 1,000 residents of the eastern French city of Strasbourg come together to pay homage to the victims of Tuesday's terror attack. The mayor praises the city's resilience. A range of right-wing and far-right organisations stage a so-called March Against Marrakesh in Brussels. This in protest against the UN-backed process of intergovernmental negotiations on migration. A counter-demonstration is also underway. And after repeated delays, nearly 200 nations agreed to a common rulebook for the implementation of the landmark 2015 Paris Climate Treaty. But the world's most vulnerable countries warn that the package lacks the necessary ambition to cut emissions. Thank you for joining us in the France 24 newsroom. I'm Nadia Sharbi. Backed by a range of political parties, local civil society groups staged an hour-long memorial in the centre of Strasbourg this Sunday morning, bringing together around 1,000 people to pay homage to the 4 victims of Tuesday's terror attack on the city's Christmas market. The death toll is expected to rise further as one of the dozen people injured in the shooting is reportedly brain dead. Catherine Bennett reports.
Antonio Megalizzi, Kamal Naqshband, Anupam Swepsaman, Pascal Verden.
One by one, the names of those killed in the attack in Strasbourg were read out. Hundreds of people gathered under the Christmas tree in the Place Kléber. Both local residents and visitors come to pay tribute to the victims. Anyone could participate. The town's mayor was one of the first to take the microphone.
This gathering proves that diversity of beliefs is not a handicap, but an advantage for eradicating violence, dogmatic extremism, anti-Semitism, and all types of exclusion and racism.
People improvised with songs, poems and speeches. A young girl called Sophia took to the stage to read something she had written herself.
Nous devons vivre ensemble dans la paix.
We have to live together in peace. We have to respect each other. The cure for radicalization is education, culture, knowing more, keeping an open mind on the world around us. Long live love, long live liberty.
Non-religious organisations called to fight against extremism. And the ceremony ended not with a minute of silence, but a minute of noise. The message was clear. Strasbourg, while grieving, is not broken.
Meanwhile, 3 days after the alleged gunman was killed in a shootout with police forces, French authorities are still investigating the attack. After being held by police for questioning for several days, the man's parents, 2 brothers and 2 friends have all been released. On Saturday, only 1 person still remains in custody. The March Against Marrakesh, that's the name of a demonstration taking place in Brussels this Sunday. Called for by right-wing and far-right parties, around 6,000 people have turned out for the protest against the UN's Global Pact on Migration, signed in the Moroccan capital on December 10th. The text, that's by no means legally binding, aims to improve international cooperation to ensure safe, orderly and regular migration. And in the face of this anti-migrant rally, a number of left-of-centre groups, including the socialist trades unions, have organised a counter-demonstration this Sunday. Our correspondent Dave Keating explains.
The latest numbers we're getting from Belgian media is that about 6,000 people are participating in that protest, but we also have about 1,500 to 2,000 counter-protesters, as you mentioned, people protesting the protest itself. Now, this follows demonstrations yesterday in support of France's Yellow Vest movement, but those numbers were very small. We had these 2 protests planned this weekend. Both were banned by authorities. Both were not technically allowed to take place. Yesterday, we saw huge numbers of police presence in the city, but a very small turnout for that Yellow Vest protest. Today, we're seeing much higher numbers for this anti-migration protests. And we're seeing, there was a kind of open question whether we would be seeing people wearing those yellow vests today to show solidarity with that movement. That's really not been seen. This is very much a far-right demonstration. You're seeing the extent of the yellow you're seeing in the crowd is the yellow Flemish flag. That's the northern region of Flanders, where people speak Dutch, where there is a strong secessionist movement, and you have quite a number of far-right parties. And it's those parties that organized this demonstration against that Marrakesh Pact, which is tearing the Belgian government apart at the moment. Now, the reason why they have chosen the area around central Brussels is there is a park somewhat nearby where refugees are sleeping. So those counter-protesters who came have also offered to host those people who were sleeping rough in the park in order to protect them from these far-right protesters who are on the street right now.
After multiple delays and much wrangling, representatives from almost 200 countries secured an agreement on a range of measures to tackle climate change in Katowice, Poland, as part of the COP24 summit. However, the world's most vulnerable nations warn that the plans aren't ambitious enough with their carbon reduction goals. A recent UN report shows the world is far off track in terms of keeping global temperatures down to under 1.5 degrees Celsius. Catherine Bennett and Cécile Adobati have more.
So decided.
After 2 weeks of tense negotiations, the 196 countries at the COP24 summit in Katowice, Poland, have agreed on a rulebook to put the 2015 Paris Agreement goals into action. It details how countries can account for and record their greenhouse gas emissions. Transparency is key.
The overall impact of this package is positive to the world, as it will move us one major step towards realizing the ambition enshrined in the Paris Agreement.
But some think the final text comes up short. It doesn't push countries to act more urgently to cut emissions. An IPCC report said that the world is massively off track to keep global warming down to 2 degrees Celsius, the limit decided in the Paris Agreement. But even beyond 1.5 degrees, there could be catastrophic consequences.
I think certainly the fossil fuel countries here slowed things down. I think that the United States certainly did not help on the issue of having science move forward. But there was just an overall lack of leadership from the European Union as well on getting ambition out of the agreement.
Richer countries have pledged to help developing countries cope financially with the devastating effects of extreme weather, but was silent on the question of funding after 2025. The implementation of a carbon market was a major sticking point in the talks and ended up being kicked down the road until next year's summit in Chile in November.
This Sunday, Georgia swore in its first female president, 66-year-old Salome Zurabishvili, who took the oath of office in the courtyard of an 18th century manor in the medieval town of Tel Aviv. The inauguration paves the way for a new constitution to come into force, transforming the country into a parliamentary republic with a largely ceremonial president. However, opposition parties continue to denounce Zurabishvili's election as fraudulent and are demanding snap parliamentary polls. Their plans to hold a protest rally outside the royal residence were thwarted by police, who blocked a kilometres-long opposition motorcade on a road leading from the capital, Tbilisi. And taking over the post for the fifth time, Sri Lankan media report that Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn back in as Prime Minister before the President this Sunday, bringing to an end the political crisis that began in October when he was ousted in a surprise decision. Well, this move follows the resignation of his controversial successor, Mahinda Rajapaksa, whose appointment led to a looming government shutdown. And with that, we leave this edition. Stay tuned to France 24.